Well, welcome to Deja View, and welcome to a brand new year, 1997. That means we're flashing back over 18 years of programming on the school channel. I'm your host and very old guy now after 18 years. Wow, Gary Kramer, and with me are Amy Marsh.
Hi.
And Diane Stowe.
Hello.
And we're right in the middle of finals here at the high school and at all the schools here in the Norman Public Schools. And so we're devoting a special hour of Deja View to reading, because reading's a big part of test taking. You would agree? Yes. And with this final schedule that the secondary schools have, there's lots of free time for reading. You have a 2-hour final, 2-hour break, 2-hour final, go home. So there's lots of time for some recreational reading this month, and so we're going to devote the entire show to the books that have been recommended for children to read over the past decade. The Sequoyah Children's Book List has featured prominently on the school channel for the last 10 or 11 years or so. But before we get into that, I have to ask you, have you seen the movie Jerry Maguire?
Yes, sir. Twice.
Twice? You must have really liked it.
No.
Okay, if you haven't seen the movie Jerry Maguire, be sure to go, because one of our ex-students is in it. We had mentioned before that Megan Price was scheduled to appear in that movie, and then, big surprise, there's another Norman High School graduate in Jerry Maguire, Susan Pingleton. Now, Susan Pingleton was a media student on the school channel before there were media classes or a school channel. She was involved in the very first project we ever did on video called Partners with Art. And it's very appropriate that she be on that very talented young woman. And her mother, Nora Pingleton, was the art teacher at Whittier. And I used to be an art teacher at Whittier, so I knew that family quite well. And so I got a phone call. Said, Susan's in this movie, be sure to look for her. So if you go see Jerry Maguire, look for Susan Pingleton. She's one of the women in the Divorced Wives therapy session. She's the one sitting on the couch, and she's the one that holds the Coke can, and it's got most of the lines in all those little therapy sessions. Blonde. If you've watched the school channel, you won't have any trouble recognizing Susan Pingleton and Jerry Maguire. Now, Susan's not in any of the clips we're going to see today, because we're going back to, what, 1986 to pick up some Sequoyah book specials. Now, the Sequoyah books are recommended reading for elementary students here in the state of Oklahoma, and students who read a certain number of the books off the list get to vote for their favorite book on the list. And then the Oklahoma Library Association invites the author of the winning book to come to Oklahoma, and they give them this big award, right? Now, do you guys remember doing that?
I never got to meet the author, but
I went.
I remember voting.
Yeah, I went one year when Bill Wallace won for Beauty, I think.
All right.
And it was a whole big award thing, and people had presentations, and he talked, and...
And you actually went.
Oh, yeah, I
met him.
went. Yeah, he was awesome. I've met him several times. He's really
Touch
cool.
you. That's a huge deal, because that's like a statewide deal. But you remember reading and voting, okay? And they're doing that still. Now, there are 2 lists of Sequoyah books. There's one for children, there's one for young adults. And today's show, we're going to focus on the children's book lists and some young adult book lists as well. So we'll try to keep you posted on which is which. Now, Good Company this week is doing a special on this year's Sequoyah Children's Book List. So if you want to know what kids are voting on this year, be sure to watch Good Company this week. But if you'd like to know what kids have read and voted on in years past, stay tuned. Because even though these books are not on the list this year for voting, they're still very good books. And if you haven't read them, you may want to take some time to go back and read some of these books from the Sequoyah lists over the last decade.
As Mr. Kramer said, in order to participate in selecting the Sequoyah Book Award, each student is required to read 2 of the books on the list. Letty Watt made it possible for every student to be involved, as she read 2 selections from our very own Channel 29 studio.
My name is Letty Watt, and I'm the library teacher at Jefferson Elementary. This year, the boys and girls in grades 3, 4, 5, and 6 will have an opportunity to read books on a list called the Sequoyah Reading List. If they read at least 2 of these books, in January they will then be able to vote on their favorite book. Today, however, I would like to read you one of the stories from that list. It is a story by Eve Bunting. The Man Who Could Call Down Owls, a story by Eve Bunting, with illustrations by Charles Michalajczyk. There was once a man who could call down owls. He wore a cloak of softest white and a wide hat with a feather in it, and he carried a willow wand. Every night, when the dark came, the owl man walked into the woods and stopped at the first clearing. Every night, a scattering of people from the village would follow to watch. And the boy Con, who lived in the village, always came. The owl man stared into the trees. He had a shadow on his face, but not in his eyes, and he made no sound. The watchers, too, stayed quiet and at a distance. The owl man stretched his willow wand to the night sky. And the owls came. The owls came, swooping on noiseless wings. The owls came to perch on his shoulders. The owls came to perch on his wand, to gather on branches closest to where he stood. But always, always, the owls came. By day, the man worked in an owl barn. There were wings to be mended and legs to be splinted. How do you find the owls that need your help? The boy asked. The man smiled. They find me. And he held a screech owl. When an owl is sick and frightened, you must hold it firmly. Then it can't hurt itself or you. Always remember that. I will remember, Con said, but I wish I knew the owls as you do. You will learn, said the man. You will learn. And now in the night clearing, the boy moved to the man's side, quietly as an owl in flight. What kind is that? He whispered. Barn owl. The man's voice was high, and for a minute Con thought the sound of it was the sound of the wind in the trees. The barn owl swiveled its white flowered face and raised its wings, then closed itself again. An owl, no bigger than a sparrow, came to nestle in the shadow of the wide hat. Elf owl. And the man smoothed the pale chest feathers until the owl's eyes closed. Deep in the dark of the trees, there was a hoot and a hoot and the hooting as the great horned owl cut through the air to the land, to the stunted branch. So close that the boy could see the ring of white feathers that lay mysteriously at its throat. Owls. Owls everywhere. And the man in the middle, his cloak drifting about him like marsh mist. And Con, always Con. And the man with the owls around him. One night a stranger came. His eyes narrowed when the owls dropped from the trees, and he stepped close. Ha! A man who could command the birds of the air has power indeed, he whispered. No, Con cried. He does not command. But the stranger was not listening. At the next dusk, the man who could call down owls did not walk on the path that led to the woods. The stranger walked. He wore the white cloak and the broad-brimmed hat, and in his hand he carried the willow wand. Con ran to tug at his cloak. Where is the man who could call down the owls? What have you done with him? The stranger pushed the boy aside. You took his cloak and his hat and his willow wand, Con cried. Ha! He gave them to me. No, he would never give them to you. And the stranger smiled. I took them. I took them then, and his power along with them. The stranger's smile was as cold as death, and Khan was afraid. The people clustered behind as the stranger entered the clearing, and it was then that Khan saw the great snowy owl. He caught his breath. Never had he seen such a rare and beautiful owl. It shimmered above the clearing, its giant wings whitening the earth below. And Khan knew. He knew how the stranger came by the cloak and the hat and the willow wand. And he knew that the owl was the man and the man was the owl. And that the man who could call down owls would never return. But the stranger raised the wand to point to the moon. And the owls came. Khan had never seen so many. The sky moved with them. A hawk owl dropped on pointed wings to hover over the stranger's head, then dived, its talons raking the hat and the hands of the stranger as he raised to protect himself. And the great gray came, its flight slow and measured. It came silently on straightened legs, and its beak found the stranger's cheek. Oh, and there were others that came swooping, shearing and searing, and the air hissed to the beat of the wings, and the stranger was crawling for shelter from the trees, running now, his white cloak falling, to lie in a drift of snow. He was gone, and so were the owls. And the people stood, mute and frightened. And above the great snowy, he melted upward to fade into the clouds that covered the moon. He drifted up and was gone. And the owls came. The owls came, swooping on noiseless wings to perch on the boy's shoulders. The owls came to perch on his head. The owls came to gather on branches closest to where he stood. Chirping and screeching, they filled the night air with love. The owls came. They came to the boy Khan, the man who could call down owls.
That was The Man Who Could Call Down Owls, read by one of our favorite people of all times, Letty Watt. And she was very special to the two of you because...
Loved her. She's our librarian.
She's our librarian.
Jefferson.
And she always, I used to hate to read for always. I hated it, she would find books for me to read and make me read them and then ask me about them and find books that I like to like. So I really credit her with being a reader.
Yeah. Oh, she changed our lives too because Miss Watt was the library media specialist at Jefferson. My kids went to Jefferson, and she always did that TV turn-off week, and you had to pledge not to watch TV, but then to make it so you didn't kill yourselves or your kids or your
You got a little
spouses.
button, though.
You got a
I
little
remember
button.
that, yeah.
But she opened up the school at night, and so the whole family would go, and we would play games and talk and read books with Letty Watt at Jefferson, and she even kept the school open all night. You would sleep over at school. And that was really cool. Yes. And she went on to become a coordinator of gifted and talented programs there at Jefferson, and then she left town. I think she's in Kansas somewhere now. We really miss Letty Watt. But in 1986, she was reading a book so that all of the students who watched the school channel that year would be eligible to vote for their favorite in the Sequoyah Children's Book Competition. Now, the next year, 1987, we were asked by the Oklahoma Library Association to produce a special tape to be distributed around the state to promote the books on the Sequoyah Young Adult Book List. And it was hosted by Randy Moore, who's been on this show a lot in the last couple of years, so 1987, but we don't have that program. But we do have one from very soon after that, because it became a yearly tradition for the Media 2 students here at Norman High School to do a special reading promotion that ties in with the Sequoyah book lists.
In 1989, the Media 2 students brought the young adult Sequoyah books to life. The theme was a video game, and the plot of each book was reenacted as the media students played the video game.
Does Marvin need big, mean Leonard, the class hood, to always be defending him? If the beautiful Veronica offers to tutor him, can failing algebra be so terrible?
Why is Marvin's best friend Danny suddenly acting so obnoxious?
Read My Life in 7th Grade by Mark Seller.
Have you ever imagined the perfect senior year? Most of us want good times, good friends, and no problems. Susan had just that perfect year all planned out. She was going to be on the yearbook staff, an assignment everyone wanted, but only the best kids in school were on the staff, including Anthony, the best-looking boy in school. All Susan's plans were working, too, when disaster struck in the form of Ashley, Susan's missing 25-year-old punk rock sister.
Several years ago, Ashley had a song that went to the top of the charts, and overnight she became famous. Her picture was on magazine covers all over the country, but her fame lasted only a few weeks. No matter how hard Ashley tried, and she tried everything, she never regained that fame. So she came home full of hate and anger, blaming everyone but herself for her failure.
Will Susan's perfect year be destroyed by Ashley's return? Can Susan save Ashley from self-destruction? Read Caroline Cooney's Don't Blame the Music.
Boy, Chris, you sure do get into these video games.
After you play them for a while, you really get to know the course and you can anticipate what's going to happen. It also helps to have a keen eye and lightning reflexes.
Look out!
Whoa! That was close. You know, you also get to know where you know the personalities of the characters in these video games. They're sort of like little video buddies and gremlins.
Again, Chris, the same is true with books. As we read, we begin to know the characters and their situations. They become like friends to us. And like friends, they involve us in their lives.
Some of the friends you'll meet in the Sequoyah Young Adult Book List lead pretty weird lives.
And some of their lives are amazingly like our own.
Izzy was leading a great life as a pretty popular 15-year-old when the accident happened. Isabel, I'm afraid we're going to have to take it off. That was Dr. Carstairs' voice. I knew. Sure enough, it was Dr. Carstairs' face floating there. That was the last time I saw him or heard him. He disappeared from my life, taking half of my right leg with him. Everything in Izzy's life changes. There are changes in all the small day-to-day tasks of living, such as moving to a downstairs bedroom and learning to take a bath. Then there are the changes in her friendships, when her old friends suddenly have little time for her and feel awkward when they're with her. Her 10-year-old sister even envied all the attention Izzy receives from the family. Only Rosamond Weber, an outspoken, blunt, and unattractive classmate, has a clear sense of what it all really means for Izzy and what it will take for Izzy to deal with her handicap. Will Izzy, with Rosamond's help, be able to come back from this injury inflicted by a teenage drunken driver? Read Izzy Willy-Nilly by Cynthia Voigt.
A mother is a person who always sticks around, right? Not always.
16-year-old Lenny O'Brien's mother walked away when Lenny was just a baby and hasn't been home since. Lenny has always lived with her grandparents, but now her mother wants to visit Lenny so they can get to know each other. Lenny wants no part of it. In fact, she's worked hard at hating her mother for leaving her, and she's not about to stop now. She even continues to hope that her mother has suffered a lot of pain for giving her up. But when her mother appears, she's tall, pretty, and well-dressed. Lenny had expected her to be wild and hard-looking, wearing lots of cheap jewelry, the kind that left green marks on her skin.
Now Lenny wonders if something worse isn't about to happen to her. Maybe she won't be able to keep on hating her mother. find out if she does, read Yesterday's Daughter by Patricia Calvert.
Are you ever embarrassed by your parents?
Do you ever think one of your parents is crazy?
Well, Nick is worried that there is something wrong with his dad.
Of course, Nick knew his dad changed jobs often, and they moved a lot, but there isn't anything really wrong with his father.
His dad has quit going to work. He claims the communists are conspiring against him, and he is suspicious of everyone.
Nick's mother doesn't seem to realize that there's anything wrong. She says his dad will find another job and ignores the warning signs.
Nick, too, ignores the problems.
But Nick can't ignore his father's mental illness and finally reaches out for help.
How Nick faces his father's illness and his family's problems makes this a good story about a problem a child shouldn't have to solve.
Read The Keeper by Phyllis Reynolds Naylor.
Video games are a form of high-tech escapism.
You know, Christy, we all need to escape.
From what?
Our problems, our feelings, our daily routine. Everyone escapes in some way. Personally, I choose video games.
Others use more drastic ways like drugs, running away, even suicide. Obviously, some ways are healthier than others.
I'll stick with the video games.
And I'll stick with books. Reading is the great escape. Books can take you anywhere and let you be anything.
Let's go.
Do you ever wonder what you'll look like when you grow up? 17-year-old Stacy awakes in a hospital not knowing how she got there. Her body feels and looks very different. Panic begins to grow even as a nurse enters the room. In a few hours, Stacy is told an overwhelming number of facts. She's been in a coma for 4 years after being shot by an intruder. The same intruder shot and killed her mother, and the intruder was never identified or caught. Stacy can barely remember being shot and can't remember what the person looked like. But as she returns to school life and re-meets old friends, Stacy wonders about the killer and finds herself looking for him. Unfortunately, he's also looking for her, and unlike Stacy, he knows who she is. Find out who the killer is along with Stacy by reading The Other Side of Dark by Joan Nixon.
Attending school on a campus very much like this one, a young boy named Andy finds himself thrust into a very real and frightening situation.
It all started when he answered the phone. A stranger's voice came over the line. "I've killed someone," the voice said. Andy listened as the caller told him how he killed a girl named Nina, a girl attending the local university.
Andy did not take this lightly. He knew that death was very real. It had only been 1 year since his mother had been killed.
Not as police, not anyone will believe this bizarre story. They said it was merely a crank call and dismissed it as a fake. Andy knew otherwise.
Alone in his belief of the strange caller's story, Andy embarks on a life-threatening obsession to uncover the truth.
Andy finds that Nina really is a student at the university, and to his surprise, she's still alive.
Andy's determination to protect Nina and prove the existence of the caller forces the caller into action, and not only threatens Nina's life, but his own life as well.
Think you can make it, Ken?
I don't know, Dave.
Read Wolf Rider.
We all long for and dream about the day that we graduate from school and become our own boss. That day has finally arrived for 17-year-old Jane Cahill, but instead of leaving home, she returns to the only place she can call home. But home is also the place Jane remembers with pain and terror because it's the place where her mother murdered her abusive father many years ago. After her mother was sentenced to prison, Jane lived, unwanted and lonely, with her aunt and uncle. Now she goes home determined to make a life for herself in this dilapidated shack. Can Jane survive the isolation? More importantly, can she learn to care about other people? Read The Solitary by Lynn Hall and find out.
David Purdy had a dog, Corky, when he was young, but didn't take proper care of the dog, and so the dog was put to sleep. David has never forgotten Corky or his failure to care for her.
It is several years later now, and David is reminded of Corky as he listens to his attorney father defend Mr. Jacobson, Max's owner. Max is an attack-trained Doberman pinscher who attacked a deliveryman and is now his owner is being sued for injuries. David's father saves the dog from being put to sleep, and David convinces his dad to let him try to retrain the dog.
Will David be able to care for Max and retrain him? Or will Max, in spite of all David's care, always be a dangerous dog capable of killing?
Playing these video games and learning about these books have been a lot of fun.
For us, it's been fun and games, but for the authors competing for this award, it's a job and a career. Winning this award would be a great honor for any of the authors.
It is important, so you'll want to vote wisely. You'll have the chance to vote early in 1989.
You will have between now and then to read at least 3 of the 16 titles nominated. You can pick up the books and voting ballots in your school library.
Here are some more titles to look for from the Sequoyah Young Adult Book List.
That was a look at some of the books on the 1989 Sequoyah Young Adult Book List that was produced by Media 2 students here at Norman High. And the video game segments were all shot by Fred Avery, who works here at the Video Resources Studio and who next year will be the media teacher at Norman High School North. So maybe those students at Norman High School North next year will be involved in Sequoyah book lists. Who knows? But the tradition continues here on the school channel as we help promote reading by talking about and promoting the Sequoyah books.
Join us as we take you through the 1990-91 Sequoyah Book Pageant. The fabulous Gigi Robertson and Philip Quinn take each book to you, the judges, in order to select the winner. Who says you can't judge a book by its cover?
Welcome to the 1990-91 Sequoyah Young Adult Book Award Pageant, live from the Card File Ballroom in your school library. I'm your host, Bert Sparks, and with me to share in this evening's glamour and excitement is the lovely and talented Miss Sequoyah Young Adult herself, Lucinda Lips.
Thank you, Bert. You can almost feel the excitement in the air. 13 beautiful books prepare to capture your attention on their way to being crowned the Sequoyah Young Adult Book of 1990. Tonight's pageant is the culmination of years of preparation by the books and their authors. In fact, every book on our stage has a 1988 copyright, so they are all evenly matched and very new to our competition. So really, any one of our books could end up with the authorized title.
The books have already completed the preliminary round of judging in which they were evaluated for their literary excellence. The panel of judges has narrowed the field down to the 13 finalists you will meet tonight.
That's right, Bert. Tonight the books will be judged in 3 categories. Poise and appearance, in which they will model their fabulous designer book jackets. Talent, in which the judges will evaluate the skill of their author. And teen popularity, in which the judges will decide which is the favorite among Oklahoma's teens. It's a tough competition, Bert, but I think our books are up for it.
Before we bring out the contestants, let me introduce to you our distinguished panel of judges. Look around. It's you! That's right, you, the 7th and 8th and 9th graders in the state of Oklahoma. We'll pick the winner of the Sequoyah Young Adult Book Award for 1990. We'll talk more about your qualifications later. Now it's time to meet our first group of finalists for the Sequoyah Young Adult Book of the Year.
Our first finalist is Magicians of Arion by James Barrie, published by Harper & Row. This gothic adventure story likes magic, dragons, and King Arthur's kingdom, and plays the wooden flute.
Who is the boy Ronin who suddenly appears on the legendary island of Arion? He remembers nothing except his name and his incredible magical powers. He brings nothing except a wooden flute and a strange metal amulet. The dragon Yorba, the island's master mage, befriends Ronin and becomes his mentor. The two grow to love each other, though Ronin's happiness is shadowed by a bizarre nightmare and the certainty that it holds the key to his blocked memories. But Ronin's worries are soon eclipsed by a crisis of such magnitude that it threatens the fabric of history. Yorba convinces Ronin to undertake a quest that takes him to the court of King Arthur and taxes his extraordinary powers to their ultimate limit. It is a quest that could reveal the secret of his identity, restore a teetering kingdom, and cost him his life.
Our next contestant is sponsored by Harcourt Brace Jovanovich. Meet A Sudden Silence, written by the ever-popular Eve Bunting. A Sudden Silence is interested in making the world a safer place for everyone, but especially the handicapped.
Jesse Herman knows he will never forget the night his brother Bry was killed by a hit-and-run driver, because Jesse was there too when the car smashed into him, when the screeching of the brakes faded into that terrible sudden silence. In this haunting, sensitive novel for young adults, Eve Bunting addresses the complex issues of alcoholism, disability, and the loss of a sibling. Yet what stays in the mind is not tragedy, but Jesse and Chloe's determination to face the truth, and finally, their optimism and hope.
Meet the Winchesters. The Winchesters, written by James Lincoln Collier and published by Macmillan, likes working in the family mill and dealing with problems of the divided loyalties.
"14-year-old Chris Winchester is torn between two worlds. By birth, he's part of the indomitable Winchester clan, owners of the enormous electronics factory that employs nearly everyone in town. Yet Chris's father gave up his stake in the business to work for the Peace Corps. When he died, his mother and twin sisters moved into a tiny gatehouse on the Winchester estate. In spite of himself, Chris is drawn into the inner circle of the Winchester clan. Suddenly, he realizes that part of the Winchester wealth might be his one day. Being rich sounds exciting, but Chris's conscience is uneasy. He's faced with difficult grown-up decisions. Where does he belong, and whose side is he on?
December Stillness, Clarion Book, offers this work by Mary Downing Hahn. December Stillness concerns itself with social issues such as the homeless and Vietnam veterans.
Every time Kelly visits the public library, Mr. Weems, the homeless man in town everyone knows but no one has ever spoken to, is there. When Kelly chooses the homeless as her topic for a research paper, she is positive Mr. Weems would be the perfect source of information. Much to her surprise, he refuses to speak to her and turns her way when she offers him food and warm clothes. Will Mr. Weems ever accept Kelly's help?
Thank you, contestants. Aren't they wonderful? The competition is sponsored by the Oklahoma Library Association to encourage the reading and writing of quality literature for young adults. The voting will take place in your school in January of 1991.
To be eligible to vote, you must be in the 7th, 8th, or 9th grade of the 1990-91 school year. You must have read at least 3 of the 13 books on the master list. You can only vote for the books you have read or have heard read.
Each of these books is so fabulous, you'll want to read them all. The voting will take place by secret ballot. But there are no secrets tonight. Let's meet some more of our finalists for the 1990 Sequoyah Young Adult Book Award.
Representing ancient Greece, The Dawn Palace, The Story of Medea. Written by H.M. Hoover and published by E.P. Dutton, The Dawn Palace features golden fleece, betrayal, and adventure.
Medea is a beautiful princess with blue-black hair and hazel eyes. Although it would seem she would have a wonderful life as a princess, she is troubled. Find out how her mother's death and recent problems with her friends have affected her when you read The Dawn Palace by H.M. Hoover.
And now, from Clarion Books comes Solus Holt's A Circle Unbroken. With a special interest in frontier days, A Circle Unbroken has a lot to say about families in different cultures.
A Circle Unbroken by Silas Hodges is about Rachel Porter. Rachel, captured as a child in 1838 by a band of renegade Sioux, has been recaptured at 17 by her minister father. But the chief of the tribe has raised her as a daughter. No matter what her white father demands of her, she cannot pretend that Kedowee, the name her Indian family gave to her, never existed. If only she could make her stern, harsh father understand that she was not raised by heathens, but by a warm, loving family she loves very much, inspired by actual incidents where white children were seized by Indians and later returned.
Born into Light is our next contestant, representing Scholastic Incorporated and written by Paul Samuel Jacobs. The science fiction adventure story likes things that are really out of this world.
On a quiet night in a sleepy New England town, young Roger Westwood saw the sky ripped apart by light. Out of the light ran a living form, a young boy, wild as a wolf. Where did it come from? Roger's discovery of the scorched earth from the brilliant light in the woods and the unformed creature floating in the pond nearby might hold the answers. Saying it likes things a little more down to earth, but just as complicated, is A Different Season by David Class, published by E.P. Dutton. This entry likes baseball, girls, boys, and girls who play boys baseball.
A great Sequoyah book nominee this year is A Different Season by David Class. For Jim Streak Rourke, this promises to be a fantastic year. Not only can he pitch a baseball at 80 miles per hour, thus the nickname Streak, and not only are Major League Scouts excited, but Jennifer Douglas, the star of the girls softball team, is definitely interested. Romance is in the air until Jennifer talks about being on the team. At first, Jim thinks it would be great for her to be the manager. But when she really tells him that she wants to play on the team, he explodes in rolling laughter. But by the time he's finished laughing, she's history because she was totally serious. Jen's wish sends Sparks to fly home and to the school board. To find out more, be sure and check out A Different Season by David Class.
Let's visit the island. This book likes to travel, not to the South Seas as you might expect from the title, but to a world of nature and self-understanding. The Island is by Gary Paulson, published by Orchard Books.
Just when Will Newton knew what he had to know to live in Madison, Wisconsin, like which drinking fountains were always goobered with gum, where to locate the best bratwurst or the best bike roads, just when he had found good friends, and Cindy Matheson had almost noticed him. Just when he had it made, his father walked in and told him they were moving. And not to even a town, but to a small house in the woods, miles from the nearest settlement.
Fabulous, just fabulous. I'm certainly glad I'm not one of the judges. In my opinion, these books are all winners.
We're both just a little too old to vote in this competition.
Oh, speak for yourself, Bert.
Well, age notwithstanding, to be eligible to vote, you must be in grades 7, 8, or 9, and you must have read at least 3 of the books on the master list. Tonight's pageant is to help the judges choose which books they want to read.
Well, before I get any older, let's meet the last group of contestants up for the 1990 Sequoyah Young Adult Book Competition. Randy Powell offers My Underrated Year. This book likes mountains, moving, and being a sophomore in high school.
Roger's hoping to make the varsity football team and be #1 on the men's tennis team. But the twins Paul and Mary Jo Mountain moved to town, and there's a good chance neither of his dreams will come true. Paul is an incredible football player, and Mary Jo is called the sophomore sensation and is trying out for the men's tennis team. Read My Underrated Year by Randy Powell to find out what happens to Roger his sophomore year.
William Slater takes the stage with another entry from E.P. Dalton, The Duplicate. This book describes itself as double the pleasure, double the fun, and double the excitement.
When David finds a mysterious machine that can copy living things, he thinks his problems are over. By duplicating himself, he can pay his obligatory visit to Grandma and keep his date with Angela. While the other David is in school, the real one can spend the day at the beach. The possibilities are endless and terrifying. For the duplicate that David creates of himself has a mind, ideas, and desires of its own. And what began as the solution to David's problems turns into a nightmarish struggle for identity.
Here is A Good Courage, representing William Morrow and Company. This offering by Stephanie Tolan likes old hippies, young boys, and a communal lifestyle.
A Good Courage by Stephanie S. Tolan is a story about Ty, the teenage son of Jasmine, a flower child still trying to find her place in the world. The setting is a commune called the Kingdom, where Brother Daniel is the leader. Ty quickly realizes that children and teens lead a hard, miserable life in the Kingdom. Days are filled with field work, evenings with work in the kitchen. There is very little food, and the slightest wrong gets severe punishment. Jasmine can't be convinced that Ty's life is miserable.
With the improbable title, probably still Nick Swanson, Virginia E. Wolf and Henry Holt and Company tell us that to be like everyone else, we must accept that we're different.
Nick Swanson mostly understands what being in room 19 means. You can't drive even if you're 16. Sometimes regular kids make fun of you because you aren't as smart as they are, but other times you get to do work that's fun. Nick feels like an outcast because of his learning disability, and some kids call him a drooler. Find out how Nick gets through high school in Probably Still Nick Swanson by Virginia Woolf.
That was Gigi Robertson and Philip Quinn hosting the Sequoyah Young Adult Book
They were
Pageant.
funny.
Oh, and I enjoyed working on that. We had so much fun producing that, mainly because those two were so much fun to work with. But each year we had to come up with a gimmick to promote these books. You know, we had the video game and we had the book pageant. One year it was like MTV and we tried to do some real special things there. But the book pageant has to be one of my favorite things. So I would always come up with a gimmick and pick kids to host the Sequoyah special. But the students, the Media 2 students, were each assigned a book. They would read the book and then do the book talk, and then I would also assign a gimmick for them. And as you saw that year, their assignment was to recreate the cover of the book. The previous year, they had to act out the plot somehow, you know, and show the setting and the characters. So each year is a little bit different, kind of keep us interested in doing it every year because it's a second semester project that ties us up for quite a long time. So it's a big undertaking for the Sequoyah book specials done by the Media 2 students.
In 1991, Rex Suba was in charge of the media classes, so it was his students who did the Sequoyah book special that year. As we see what kids are reading 6 years ago, pay attention to the computer graphics and special effects that Mr. Suba incorporated into the student book talks.
We have all these Sequoyah Young books to read. Then we have to vote on them. Which one will I read? Which one will be my favorite? How can I sleep?
I am Vision, and you have entered the Sequoyah Zone. Here's where 7th, 8th, and 9th grade students of Oklahoma encounter each of the 15 books from the Young Adult Book Master List. During the 1991-92 school year, you and your classmates will get to read these books, which all had 1989 copyrights. Your mission will end with your voting on the favorite book in 1992. Let's begin our journey.
Keller Parrish has been sent to her grandmother's until the rest of the family can move to Cascade from Seattle. The good country air was to help her asthma, but the country, like everything else in Cascade, Drew Sinnott in particular, took a little getting used to. Keller knows it was of little use to make friends in the new school. People who are sick all the time only disappoint themselves if they try to have friends. Keller's frequent attacks of asthma caused her to miss so much school. When Keller walks out into the countryside after school, she finds a lovely, peaceful, inviting pond. She decides to take a swim. Who is the stranger Tom Hurley? Why can't Keller find him at school? Has anyone else ever seen him? Drew, of all people, helps Keller solve the mysteries. Maybe Cascade isn't so bad after all. Maybe all people do need friends.
Shelley is ready to enjoy a quiet summer in Vermont. Her dad bought this summer house so they can enjoy fresh air, swim in the lake, fish for trout, climb every mountain. People say that children need a backyard for a normal, subtle, stable upbringing. Well, he'd give it to them for June, July, and August. Then it'll be back to New York City. Shelley's a typical teenager. It's not her fault that her father's married yet again, or that her real mother walked out on the family for an exciting Frenchman. She's adjusting. But Shelley can't stand it when her perfect relatives give her that what a pity look. So when the invitation arrives to attend her big family reunion, she's less than excited. The invitation comes from Aunt Maggie, Daddy's older sister.
She lives out in the Midwest, where she and her family lead a perfect life. We call them the Perfects, because it's rather like their real last name, which is perfect. In the old days, when we were sort of perfect ourselves, we used to visit them, but we don't anymore. Daddy says he doesn't have the energy. Aunt Maggie married Uncle Todd, and she is lovely and he is handsome, and she is chairman of the school board and he is a pharmacist. They have a backyard, of course, have always had a backyard, and therefore their children, Brett and Carolyn, are also perfect. Brett is 16 and handsome, and Carolyn is 14 and beautiful. They were never awkward and fat, never had braces, never had pimples, and never got anything below a B+. In gym, they are always chosen first for teams. That is just the kind of family they are. When they visit us in New York City, we like to walk down the sidewalk and point to perfectly innocent people waiting for the bus and whisper, "Careful, drug deal." Carolyn and Brett always fall for this and tell their mother, and Aunt Maggie says if we just had a backyard to play in, we would be stable like her kids. Stable is a big word in Aunt Maggie's life. She has stability. Carolyn and Brett have tremendous stability, but we have none. We are unstable, unbalanced, and at risk. She loves that one, at risk. As if my brother and sister and I are poised at the edge of a cliff, teetering dangerously, nobody within reach to pull us away from a smushed to slush death.
As the date of the reunion approaches, Shelley is apprehensive. Her father has to go on a business trip and can't promise he'll show up. And even worse, her older sister Joanna will be in Paris visiting their mother. That leaves Shelley, her younger brother Angus, who makes Dennis the Menace look like a saint, and a new stepmother to attend. Read Family Reunion for a hilarious yet touching look at today's family.
Children of the River by Linda Crew. Sundara Savan had to leave her parents, her brother and sister, and the boy she loved since childhood when the Khmer Rouge army invaded her Cambodian home. Now, living in Oregon with her aunt's family, she wonders if she'll ever fit in anywhere again. 17-year-old Sundara's life is one of constant hard working, earning straight A's, caring for her nephews, picking and selling fruits and vegetables. As a good Cambodian girl, she never dates and knows that her family will eventually choose a Cambodian husband for her. Meanwhile, Sundara sees that her aunt is displeased with her. Nothing she does is ever good enough. When she meets Jonathan McKinnon, an unusual classmate, a strong bond quickly forms between them. His interest, understanding, and kindness draw her. His American ways frighten her. She wants to know him better, but her aunt forbids any contact between them. Sundara is caught between her old life and a new one, the past and the future, her own happiness and that of her beloved family. Can she choose the future without sacrificing her past? Read Children of the River and discover one of the most intriguing young women in young adult fiction.
The Great Man's Secret by Peter Van Raven. Paul Bernard is a reclusive novelist who, with his daughter, Lorna, lives in an isolated hilltop home on the California coast. He lost his legs some years ago before as a result of a secret accident. Having just refused the Nobel Prize for Literature, Bernard is approached by a young Jerry Huffaker, who has biked his way to Bernard's door to ask for an interview for his high school paper. Jerry's own life is in some disarray, his mother having recently left him and his father to pursue her career. Surprisingly, Jerry does have a conversation with Bernard. Even more surprisingly, he is asked back for the next Saturday and the next, until he has become an essential part of the great man's effort to confront his past. A strange and unexpected healing begins to take place among all of them. Jerry in his relationship with his parents, Lorna as she sees her father in a new light, and the embittered Bernard himself. The Great Man's Secret is a compelling novel of discovery, growth, and new beginnings.
Months ago, Ben's father, Clyde, left them. His mother, Constance, has worked hard to support Ben, his sister, Felice, and his brother, Jude. But when a note arrives from Los Angeles from Clyde with the $100 bill, Constance decides to quit her job in El Paso and travel to Los Angeles to search for her husband. The children all agree it is the right thing to do. The search turns into a disaster when most of their money is stolen soon after they arrive. How will they eat? Where will they sleep? With their remaining money running out, they have no choice but to sample some of the help available for homeless people. The first stop is the Heavenly Light Mission. Some of the other choices they discover are not much better. Read Come in the Morning by Mark Jonathan Harris to learn what it truly means to be destitute and homeless in a big city.
My brother, Wing, and Sam Daly have been best friends since the 7th grade. Now they're seniors in high school. I've always tagged after them, and they've always let me. But everything's different this year. At least, everything's different with Wing. He hates school and doesn't want to stay around to graduate. There's a war over in a place called Vietnam, and Wing wants to join the Marines and go fight for our country. Sam tells him that wars aren't like parties, and Sam's father was killed in the war in Korea when Sam was just a baby. I don't want Wing to go, but how can we stop him? Sam and Geraldine try their best to change Wing's mind, but he insists on quitting high school and joining the Marines. Before Wing leaves, he and Sam have so many terrible arguments that they can no longer be friends. In fact, Sam goes off and joins a group who are actively opposing the war. It takes a great tragedy to bring Sam and Geraldine and Wing together again. To find out what happens to Sam, Geraldine, and Wing, read And One for All by Teresa Nelson.
Do 12-year-old boys serve as soldiers? Uno, Lolo, and Ignacio are conscripted by a revolutionary army in Central America. Taken from their homes, they are transformed from boys to soldiers in 8 days. For the first time, the Central American conflicts began to have a point that the struggle for a better life for all people must be passed on to educated young people who will form governments that benefit instead of exploit the common people. Louise Moret's novel, The 43rd War, is powerful and believable. Once begun, it is impossible to put down.
As another look at Sequoyah books, that time done by the students of Rex Suba, who will be the media teacher at Norman High School next year. And so you'll get to see the work of his students on the school channel next year. I will be teaching some classes here in the studio that will have students from both schools. And I'll have the district spokespeople with me and good company in those types of shows. So there'll be media programs at Norman High North, taught by Mr. Avery, and Norman High School, taught by Mr. Suba, and the Video Resources Studio, taught by me. I guess we'll have to draw straws to see which of us gets to do the Sequoyah Book Special from that year. Now, when we got Good Company, they took over responsibility for promoting the children's books. on their show. And that tradition continues. As I said earlier on the show, if you want to know what books are on this year's list, tune in Good Company. And it was also true a couple of years ago when the first Good Company cast promoted the books on the Sequoyah Children's Book List.
In 1990, each Good Company cast member made a bookmark to promote their own Sequoyah book, as well as the Good Company special, where they not only got to share their book with each other, but with the whole community.
I'm Joey Donnelly, and my friends and I have a Reader's Theater play for you. Front Porch Stories at the One Room School by Eleanor E. Tate. The characters are Margie, 12-year-old girl, Cousin Ethel, Margie's 7-year-old cousin, Uncle Matthew, Margie's father and Ethel's uncle, young Matthew when Matthew was in school, Elmo Bennett, young Matthew's best friend, Aunt Daisy, Matthew's aunt and teacher. 12-year-old Margie Carson was bored. Missouri summers are hot, and when your only playmate is your cousin who's 5 years younger than you, it's hard to entertain yourself. Margie was lying on the sidewalk in the front of her house. She was trying to lie still and let the giant mosquitoes bite her without slapping them. There were no games, no television shows that were interesting, and it was too hot to ride bikes. Ethel, Margie's 7-year-old cousin, was standing in the middle of the flower bed. Her nose was to the dirt and the bottom side up showing her panties when Margie got an idea.
Help, Ethel, help. I'm bleeding. I just got bit by a vampire bat.
Margie fell in the grass rolling and screaming as she held onto her neck.
Run, Ethel, run. It got me in the neck. Ah, they're coming from everywhere. Look out, there's one in your hair.
Help, help, Uncle Matthew. Save me from the giant mosquitoes.
That got her good. Serves her right all the stuff she does to annoy me. Gosh, now I'm bored again.
Margie's father, Matthew, came out of the house with Ethel following and wiping her nose. Uncle Matthew's face meant business, and Margie hoped she wasn't in trouble.
Now, Margie, you know there aren't any vampire bats out here. Since you are so bored and ready to use your imagination, let's go down to the old schoolhouse and I'll tell you some stories.
The little group walked to the schoolhouse and told stories for several hours. Here's a sample of one of those stories.
Once there was a big dog. Smokey, a pointed-nosed, sway-backed, fat-bellied, bald-headed little chihuahua. He was bald-headed because he had the mange, and he scratched so much his hair was just gone. One summer, the giant mosquitoes were getting to him so bad, me and the Bennett twins, Elmo and Delmo, just had to help him. I mean, it was bad. One afternoon, we saw about 50 giant ones trying to carry him off. We decided to help him out.
I know. You keep the teacher busy, and we'll sneak him into the schoolhouse this afternoon. Since the teacher is your Aunt Daisy, Matthew, you keep her busy.
At the end of recess, someone's big foot tripped me just as I was walking by Aunt Daisy. I fell and knocked Aunt Daisy down. She fell on top of me. Boy, was she mad. But I had just kept her busy, and Elmo and Smokey got into the back room of the schoolhouse.
Now, children, let's sing for a while to cool ourselves off.
Aunt Daisy began to play, and we began to sing. This strange sound began to come from the back closet. Aunt Daisy looked straight at me.
What's that noise? Something's in the back closet.
No, Aunt Daisy, that's probably just a bird pecking at the window.
Okay, children, let's sing now. Now, I know there's something back there.
Maybe it's a car radio playing or a train or...
What? A train? Huh?
I got back to the closet right behind Aunt Daisy. She was opening the door. Here came that fat-bellied, bald little Smokey right through the door and past Aunt Daisy. Aunt Daisy had her paddle in her hands.
Matthew J. Cornelius, you let a possum into this school?
She came swinging that paddle at me, grabbed my arm and paddled my behind. Elmo and Delmo started laughing. Aunt Daisy was so mad she grabbed them up and paddled them just because they were laughing. Nobody laughed after that. It was quiet quiet for the rest of the day, and Aunt Daisy never did know that possum was Smokey.
To enjoy more of Front Porch Stories at the One Room School, read Eleanor E. Tate's book. Don't forget to vote for your favorite Sequoyah book.
Special group of kids, the very first Good Company cast doing their Sequoyah book talks, and there were some district spokespeople involved in that as well. Elaine Ellis and Noel Ford read books as part of that special. And like Lady Watt did at the beginning of the show, the Good Company kids read books so that anyone watching would become eligible to vote. Now that's also true this year, so if you want to become eligible to vote in the children's Sequoyah book election, watch Good Company because we're going to read you 2 of the books and that will make you eligible to vote. Now let me say, all of the books that you've seen promoted this year are excellent books and you should read them. Not if you're just a kid or a young adult, they're good for anybody. In fact, I read a lot of those young adult books. You can read them in an evening. So if you want some good recreational reading, check out the books on this year's Sequoyah book list or Sequoyah Young Adult book list, or any of the Sequoyah book lists from previous years. Now you can go to the public library and go to the children's desk and ask, and they've got all of the lists for as long as there have been Sequoyah books in the state of Oklahoma. So you can pick one you want and read it. And when you do that, you'll be helping us on our efforts to help the nation read 1 billion books as part of the I'd Sooner Read campaign that's also going on in the state of Oklahoma. So we're trying to read and we're trying to promote reading. So turn off the TV now and, or find some time during finals to get one of the books, any book, doesn't have to be a Sequoyah book, and spend some time reading. Next week, we'll have a special year-end edition of Deja View where we show you some of our favorite clips from first semester. In fact, all of the shows on the school channel next week will be first semester highlights. So you'll want to tune in for that. So for Diane Stowe and A.B. Marsh, I'm Gary Kramer. Until next week, happy reading. Good night.